Hello and welcome to Held and Heard. This is a podcast for pregnant and postpartum mamas who want to feel more connected to their babies and more confident in themselves. Here, we talk about elimination communication and infant potty learning as a way of listening, not as something to add to your plate, but as a way to better understand what your baby has been communicating from the very beginning. This is a place where you learn to trust your baby and yourself. I'm your host, Heather Medlin, mother of 3, infant potty learning educator, and founder of Ready from Birth, where I guide postpartum mamas through every stage of early potty learning, from birth to toilet independence. Each week, I'll help you slow down, tune in, and discover just how aware and capable your baby already is, so you can meet them with confidence instead of doubt. Your baby is communicating, and you are capable of listening. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to Held and Heard. I wanted to share today one of the most common questions I get from you guys over on Instagram. And if you're not following me on Instagram yet, you can go hit the follow button over at readyfrombirth.ec. That's my handle over there. A lot of people will discover my work and discover elimination communication. And their first thought is, wow, this is amazing. Why did I not know about this already? And their second thought is, this won't work for me because I work, because my baby's going to be in daycare, because etc. And I want to address this one specific question that I get all the time, which is, but what about daycare? Can I do EC if my baby is going to be going to daycare? And I'm a working mom, so I get it. I deeply get this question. And for those of you who don't know, I'm actually a professional architect. I've been doing this for over a decade. That's my day job. And I have had my children, all 3 children, in childcare with each postpartum. So I fully understand this problem and this question. I have also done EC with both my second and my third baby. I will get into that a little bit more later on in this episode. But what about daycare? I would actually argue that this is not even the right question. A better question is really, but what about work? It's not that you can't do EC because your baby's going to be in daycare. What you're really telling me is that you are a working mom for whatever reason, by choice or not by choice, however it is, doesn't matter. You're going to work. You have a career that you're trying to hold down, and you've been told that diapers are the answer. Diapers are the thing that allows you to hand your baby over to somebody else to take care of them while you are at work. Wonderful invention, super helpful tool. So glad we have this. And yes, you can still do elimination communication and have a baby in diapers and have a baby in childcare with someone else. Because what you're really asking is not, will this work with daycare, but can I hand my baby over to someone else? Can I do elimination communication and not be tied to my baby 24/7 all the time? Will I have the freedom to be able to hand them over and leave? And this is a really important question. So I would argue yes, because I've done this with both my second and third babies. We've had childcare in both cases. And I do want to go into kind of how I did that, but before I jump into that, I just want to reframe your mind a little bit. Daycare is not your only option. Daycare is a great option, particularly if you only have one child. But I live in the United States and I have done the math. And y'all, the math does not math anymore when you have more than one child. Once you start having 2, 3 children who are preschool age and they're not in public school yet, it is financially unsustainable to have more than one child in daycare. Not only does the financial part of it kind of really start to not work out, but it's not the only option. And I would argue that if you're doing EC, it's not a great option, especially if you live in the US. Many moms have written to me and shared that they live in other countries and they're doing EC with their baby, and then their baby goes to daycare. And they share with their daycare provider that their baby is toilet trained effectively, that their baby prefers to use the potty, and that they will communicate their needs and let them know, and can they please support them with the potty. which is exactly what you should be doing. If you have taught your baby to use the potty, yes, you should absolutely be communicating this to your child's childcare provider, whoever that is, so that they can help support them while you're gone. And what I have found, and what many of you guys have found, is that in the US, daycare providers are generally not interested. They say, we can't do it, we won't do it, because there is a structural issue. There's actually a health code problem where a toilet is not required in an infant classroom. A toilet is not required in an infant classroom until they are like 2-3 years old, because culturally, babies are in diapers, they're not using the toilet, and therefore they don't need a toilet. That's the reasoning. And so what's happening is that there are state laws that require a certain ratio of caregiver to infant in these classrooms, and they cannot have a caregiver leave the classroom to go to the toilet, to take the baby to the bathroom, or to go dump the potty, because that would take them out of ratio. And so they're not legally allowed to do this, and they do not have the physical environmental infrastructure often for this to work out. In Europe and other countries, it has been more likely that the daycares are going to be willing to help out, that they're going to be willing to participate in this. And many daycares have reported that, wow, this actually worked really great, and we're so happy that you told us about this. This is really cool. They're curious, they're open, and they do it, and it works just fine. First and foremost, if you are dead set on using a daycare, the very first step is to talk to the provider about what you're doing with your baby and say, hey, we use elimination communication at home. We potty our baby. Yes, he wears diapers, but this is when we take our baby to the potty. This is our baby's typical signal, and can you please help out? They may say no. They may say, we can do this a little bit of the time, but it will depend. The very first step is have the conversation, because until more care providers are having this conversation and there is clearly a demand for this kind of childcare, this kind of very hands-on responsive childcare, there is not going to be a cultural shift. So first and foremost, have the conversation with the caregiver. And then the second thing is consider putting your child in a different situation. So let me tell you about what we did, and you can take what works for you and adapt. And that's the thing, is that in order for your baby to have the best possible experience away from you and to be able to continue growing this awareness that they have and developing their abilities when it comes to body awareness and communication and knowing what's supposed to happen when they feel the need to pee or poop in their body, there needs to be some level of consistency. Consistency is really important in your baby learning these skills and developing them to the point where they will naturally move towards toilet independence around the time that they're walking, which is generally in the kind of like 12 to 15 month range. If you're doing EC with your baby and you are consistent and you have your baby in care, whether with you or your husband or your mom or the daycare or whoever, if their care provider is also consistent, you can very reasonably expect your baby to be fully potty trained, fully out of diapers by the time that they're about 12 to 15 months old. That is very typical with an EC'd baby. Now, what we did with our second baby is that we got an au pair. And I was working as an architect at the time. I was only going to have an 8-week maternity leave. And my husband and I had looked at the math, and it just was not going to work out to have both of our children in daycare while I was working. It was cheaper to have an au pair, live with us, buy her groceries, pay for her room and board, than to put 2 children in full-time 40-hour per week daycare. So what did I do? I taught her how to potty our daughter. We didn't do EC with our oldest, but we were doing it with our second, our daughter. And so one of our au pair's jobs, even from the beginning, was to support both our then 2-year-old son and our infant daughter in potty training. Our son was learning how to be fully potty trained. He was 2, so his was a more conventional path, whereas our baby, our daughter, she was doing EC. And so we taught our au pair how to take care of her potty needs, how to recognize her signals, and that's what she did. That was part of her job description. And I really want to encourage you to get creative with finding somebody who can come into your home and have an employee relationship with you where you are setting the job description. If you have your child in a group childcare facility, it's much harder to do that because they have standard policies, they have standard requirements. They're going to be telling you the rules versus you telling them the rules. To be doing something like EC, which is still very countercultural, very kind of fringe in modern Western society, if you are trying to put your baby in daycare, they are more than likely not going to have done this before. If you have someone who's coming into your home and you can set the rules of engagement, you're going to have a much more successful time. We had our au pair, and she did a fantastic job. And I started work again at 8 weeks postpartum. We did not even start EC with our daughter until she was 5 weeks old. We actually started on the very same day that we started potty training our son. And at the time, my husband had 1 week left of paternity leave, and I had 3 weeks left. And so we only had 3 weeks to figure this out, y'all. 3 weeks where I was going to be home. And then we were pretty much handing her over, and I was going back to work, and our au pair was going to be taking over. We started very early. We taught her what to do, and she did a phenomenal job. She was with us for 2 years, and she had taken care of other babies before ours. And so she had done it both ways. She had done it with diapers, and she had done it with EC. And I actually interviewed her before we left, or before she left and went back to Mexico. She was from Mexico. And I asked her, what was it like doing EC with our baby? Was that helpful for you? Was it frustrating? Like, tell us about your experience. And she shared that at first she thought that it was kind of weird and that it was going to be really unnecessary because like babies can't do this, obviously. But as time went on, she realized how incredibly capable our daughter was, how helpful it was, how much easier it made her job. And she said 10 out of 10 would recommend to other caregivers. So that was a really successful journey with her. And our daughter was using the potty independently by 14 months. We started transitioning her out of diapers between about 12 and 14 months. And she was fully potty trained thereafter. So that was wildly successful. With our son, so fast forward, this is what we're doing with our third baby. We've moved houses since then. We are now living closer to family. And the plan was for my mom to take care of our baby. And we actually are not using her now. We have a nanny who comes and works at our house with us. But for various reasons, my mom was taking care of our baby and our other 2 children in the beginning. And so we have had various caregivers. We have a main primary nanny, but we've also had different backup people because maybe she was sick or she was on vacation or various things. So with this baby, we don't have an au pair. Our 2 older kids are in part-time preschool, and we have someone who comes to our house. I think we've had 4 or 5 different caregivers in the time since I went back to work at 12 weeks postpartum. And I have had to train all of them very quickly to get started and jump in to take care of him and to take care of our other 2 kids. And so I have really developed kind of a sheet that goes on the fridge that says, here's the schedule, here's when to potty him, here's his signals, here's how to do it. And I even have a little stick figure drawn on the fridge on this note that shows how to hold the baby. And obviously that has changed as he has grown and gotten bigger and evolved. And so I've updated the schedule and I've updated the picture and the routine, but I've really dumbed it down to here's just the essentials that you need to know to pick up where I've left off and keep pottying our baby. And they do a fantastic job. I will say the one person in our life that has not really wanted to participate in EC is my mom. And she's done a little bit in the times that she has been taking care of our baby, but she has a lot of reservations because it's not what she did with us. And we don't have that same kind of employee-employer relationship with my mom that we do with someone we're paying. So because my mom is just taking care of the kids because they're her grandchildren, there's a different relationship dynamic there where she kind of feels like, I'm just going to do things my way, what I think is best when you're not there. And that's part of the reason, if I'm being totally honest, why she's not our main caregiver anymore. Because she wasn't following our rules. She wasn't doing things the way that we wanted her to do them. And I love my mom. I'm not trying to throw her under the bus here, but I think this is a really important dynamic for you to consider, especially if you are a household that will be having a grandparent or other relative taking care of your baby. When you have that employee relationship with them, you can really say, this is what I want you to do it. And they're going to do it because you're paying them. So just something to keep in mind that's really important. But overall, it has been wildly successful. They have been able to keep up his potty routine, catch pees and poops, even on day one, even the very first day that they were taking care of him, without prior knowledge of him, without an ongoing relationship with him. They have been able to pick up on his signals, follow the routine that I laid out, and be very successful with this. So obviously it goes without saying, but your husband also needs to be on board as well. If you are a husband listening to this, your job is just as important as your wife's. And it's really important that everyone in the household is on board, that everyone in the household is following the same routine, using the same words, the same patterns. You don't have to take the baby to the same place, but the more you can be consistent with this and really set expectations with your baby so that your baby knows what to expect, they become accustomed to the routine. This is really going to help them to be successful later on as they grow and evolve and become mobile and eventually are moving into the independent stage. Okay, so when you're considering how to handle childcare for your baby when you're going back to work, this is really about priorities, right? It's not that you can't do EC and work, that you can't do EC and have your baby in childcare. It's about priorities. We really value EC for our baby because we've seen the benefits as it's happening. We've seen the benefits long term, and we really feel like the sacrifices that we make are worth the benefits that our baby gets of being able to have dignity and autonomy and early toilet independence and just the health benefits of not sitting in a wet or dirty diaper all the time. Not to mention the convenience factor for us, because I hate changing poopy diapers personally, and I basically never have to change a poopy diaper. Like, my baby poops in the toilet, and that's what we do. I do not change poopy diapers. So if you don't want to change poopy diapers, you're going to want to get in on this. But you can be creative also with your work schedule. And so I'm a professional architect. I am fortunate enough to have a knowledge worker type job where I'm able to work remotely. And so I have worked out routines with my employers. I've worked for different firms with my two youngest babies, but after I've had them, when I go back to work, I go back to work part-time. I'm only working 4 days a week right now. I was working 4 days a week when I went back after my daughter was born. And just making that adjustment from 40 hours to 32 hours, from 5 days to 4 days, that also really helps because now my baby is only in care with someone else for 4 days a week. And I've also worked it out with my husband that he's home 1 day a week, most weeks, not every week, but most weeks. And on average, we are only engaging a caregiver for 3 days a week. And we've also been able to further reduce that time that he's in care with someone else by adjusting our work schedules so that because I'm able to work remotely, and I do go into the office while we have a caregiver around, but I'm able to work early in the morning, I'm able to work late at night, I'm able to work on the weekends if I need to. And so this allows me to compress my day even further so that she's arriving at 8:30 and I'm arriving to relieve her at 4 o'clock. So my baby is really only in care with somebody else for about 22 hours a week. When we can start to get creative with our work schedule, get creative with the type of job we have and how we're expected to show up in the office versus showing up online or getting the work done, you can really start to craft a schedule that reduces the time that your baby is out of your care so that you can both have your career and prioritize your baby's elimination communication journey and be able to stay consistent and support them in the ways that you value. And the other thing I just really want to remind you of is that this is a temporary phase. This is not forever. This is temporary. Between birth and 1 year, you're doing EC for a year, basically, from like birth until a year. And at that point, Your baby, if you have followed the steps that I lay out in Born Ready, where I show you exactly how to navigate each stage of your baby's growth and stay consistent through each one, when you follow those steps, you will be able to expect to have your baby fully potty trained and out of diapers by a year old. And at that point, you are going to be able to have other types of childcare and not worry about it as much. You can still use a diaper as a backup, but your baby is going to be walking. They're going to be independent. They're going to be becoming verbal, and they will be able to tell a caregiver, hey, I need to potty, in a much clearer way than they are early on, where it really is up to you or the caregiver kind of interpreting the signals versus having a very clear and deliberate, hey, I need the potty. And so this is temporary. So if you're going back to work at 3 months postpartum, 6 months postpartum, 9 months postpartum, whatever it is, you're going to have some amount of maternity leave, hopefully. And if you have any amount of maternity leave at all, that is more than enough time to lay the groundwork for this, to establish routines and consistency with your baby, and then to be able to hand that over to the caregiver, whoever it is that you choose, and say, I know my baby's routine. I know their signals. Here's what they are. Here's how you can help. You will have the confidence and the clarity to be specific. And I also have worksheets for that inside of Born Ready, where I show you exactly, like, here is the one-page printout that you can fill in the blank and hand to your caregiver that tells them exactly what they need to know to be consistent. And if you are a working mom and you're pregnant right now and you're getting ready to have your baby, I just want to encourage you, don't be afraid of this. Don't be afraid to get started with your newborn, thinking that everything is new and I'm trying to learn how to feed my baby and I'm trying to make this adjustment. It is overwhelming. I am not trying to negate that at all, but I really believe that elimination communication is all about understanding your baby. And when you learn to understand your baby, it actually makes everything else about postpartum motherhood easier. That newborn phase of 0 to 8 weeks, 0 to 12 weeks, that time that you have on maternity leave with your baby, that is so critical for this practice, because it's going to allow you to form those routines, to establish the rhythm with your baby where they understand what's happening in their body. They understand what's supposed to happen next. You have been consistent with them and have laid the groundwork so that by the time you go back to work, they already know the game. And it will be very easy for them to just keep going with the caregiver that you choose. And so with our son, I started at birth. With our third baby, I started noticing his rhythms, his signals, his routines, and I started pottying him in that first week of life. I was consistent. I was clear. I knew what I was doing. I was able to recognize his signals and know exactly what he was trying to tell me. And by 10 weeks old, y'all, he was effectively potty trained. He knew what to do. He could stay dry for 4, 5, 6 hours a day. I was catching pretty much every pee and poop by that point, and I didn't even go back to work until 12 weeks. He knew exactly what to do. He had the communication. He was communicating and asking for the potty. He was able to hold it and wait, and he knew to expect the offer. Because I was consistent, because I understood his signals in that early window, we were able to be wildly successful in his journey. And I pretty much stopped using daytime diapers with him around 7.5 months. He has been in training underwear since about 7.5 months. And I have had less than a handful of poop accidents since then, and he is now 11 months old. I have changed less than 5 poops that were not in the potty since 7.5 months. We have been even more successful with our third baby than with our second, simply because I know what I'm doing. I'm using this system that I created, that I put into Born Ready for you guys, so that you have a clear path to follow to get not just your first catch in the beginning, but to actually stay consistent, to build towards communication, to empower your baby to start initiating the ask and even crawling to the potty and going to the potty by the time that they're mobile. And these are the groundwork steps that lay the foundation for actual toilet independence by the time that your baby is walking. If you want to jump on that right now, now is the time. If you're pregnant and you're preparing, now is the time to get Born Ready, start watching the modules, Start getting your house ready. Know what you're going to be doing from day one so that it doesn't feel overwhelming, so that you don't feel like you're trying to learn something new in that tender, overwhelming, sleep-deprived postpartum stage. Learn it now while you still have the time, and it's going to feel so easy and effortless once you actually have your baby with you and you're ready to get started. I'll link that down there in the show notes. Born Ready has everything you need if you are preparing and you're watching your birth classes and you're watching your breastfeeding classes and you're trying to figure out how to take care of a baby. This is the one class that you do not want to miss. You do not want to skip this. This is going to change everything for your postpartum and make it all feel so much easier. All right, thanks so much for listening. I will be back next Monday with another episode. Bye for now. If you loved today's episode, would you take a moment to help me reach even more mamas with this message? Leave me a review or share this with a friend. You can help even more families discover what's possible. You can find education and support for every stage of your baby's potty learning journey at readyfrombirth.com. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at readyfrombirth.ec. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back every Monday with a brand new episode. See you next time. Bye for now.